Well, I'm Marjorie Winters. I would like to call the Conservation Commission and Inland Wetlands and Watercourse Agency meeting to order. And I'm going to do a roll call. So again, I'm Marjorie Winters, and we've got Jason Levy, Charlie Halderman, Joe Cantalita, Donna Eaton, and Jason Bierman. And we have with us George McGregor, who's our new Planning and Zoning Department Chair. Manager, what is the exact title?
I'm Planning and Community Development Director.
All right.
Is the official title. Yeah.
That's it. All right.
So Marjorie, I was going to ask you to, since we added that item number 3 this afternoon or this morning, you might want to, I don't think we had time to post it, so you might want to just get a motion and a vote to approve the revised agenda.
Is that the which item is that? Number 3?
So that's item. It's item 8.3, appointment of me as wetlands agent, certainly interim period.
Okay, are we doing that up front, or are we doing that?
No, it's at the end. It's the last item under conservation business.
All right. So do we have a motion to add item 3 to the agenda for the appointment of George McGregor as the town wetlands agent?
So moved.
All right, that's Joe is.
I'll second.
Second, good. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, good. All right, thank you. And so we've done roll call. New business, I don't think there is any. Old business, we don't have any. General commission business minutes from January 4th. Do we have any changes or additions to that? We're hearing none. We will. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes from January 4th?
Moved. So moved to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Jason. Levy is second, and all in favor? Aye. All right. All right. Now we're moving on to agent actions. And George, there are none, are there?
There are none. I have none to report.
All right, good. And correspondence? None. Unless anyone else has anything?
Yeah, Madam Chair, we added that
letter?
We added that letter under conservation business, just so you know.
So we'll do it there. Okay. And then also we'll move on to conservation business. So George, would you like to introduce yourself and tell the committee a little bit about yourself and welcome. Sure. I had the pleasure of having coffee with George last week, and I'm so glad that he's on board in the town.
Sure. So yeah, so I'm the new planning and community development director. Boy, I've got over 25 years of experience in the planning world. I come most recently from the town of Vernon, where I was there for 2 years. Before that, my wife and family and I lived in South Carolina, in Sumter, South Carolina, where I was the planning director for a city-county joint planning organization for about 14 years. I got an undergraduate degree from Fairfield University, so this is not foreign to me to be back up here. I can talk about that in a second. I got a master's in planning from Clemson University. My wife and I moved up here to be closer to family. I've got sisters and brothers in the area. My parents still fairly healthy and share time with a place in Massachusetts. I got 2 boys who ended up going to college in upstate New York and a daughter who lives in Brooklyn. So we decided it made sense to kind of return to the old haunts and move up here for a little while.
Great. Can I ask where in upstate? Because I'm from upstate New York.
So Hudson Valley.
Hudson Valley. Okay.
We called it upstate when I was growing up.
Yeah, that's downstate. But anyway, that's
what part of the Hudson Valley? I went to college.
No.
I work with people in Manhattan, and White Plains is upstate to them.
Yes.
So I grew up in Kingston, but I've got a son at Ithaca, and a son at Rochester Institute of Technology.
Yep.
Twin boys in college at the same time. So
nice.
Oh, that must be fun.
So those are definitely upstate creds right there.
Yeah.
Those are
Rochester counts.
Yeah, that sure does. So there you go. That's my 411 on me.
That's great. Thank you.
Well, great. So when George and I met last week, we discussed certain things that we'd like to see on conservation, or certain things I'd like to see, and I know some of you also share the same opinion. And so we're looking at the various things that we should be doing in conservation commission. we really haven't been able to, we've done bits of it, but, the idea that we could have meetings on a somewhat regular basis to tackle some of the conservationists. And we were talking about the general planning topics, and the first one was the invasive species. And this is a huge issue in town. And I know one of the things we had to talk about was try to get some more information on the website. So George and I were talking about how we could do that. I know the website's been a little bit difficult to get our things onto, but there are some good, certain links. I don't know, we have to invent the wheel. That a lot of there's the Connecticut Invasive Plant Work Group that has a lot of good information that we could link to.
So what do you think the mission statement is here relative to invasive species? Is it just to figure out a better way to get existing information out there, or are you actually trying to form a working plan for how this gets done in conjunction with like the Open Space Committee?
Yeah, the Open Space Committee has been talking about how to do the invasive plants, and one of the approaches was, it is so overwhelming, but if we took on one plant a year or one plant a season or something to try to educate people about that particular plant and its role in the environment, that might be the way to go. Because if you actually listed all the different ones that are problematic, one gets a little bit overwhelmed.
Right, but that's an education. Okay, sorry, go ahead, Joe.
Yep. No, I was just going to say, if we're going to do that, and obviously I agree, Marjorie, with the Simsbury Pollinator Pathway, that's certainly one of the things that we're very concerned about are these invasives. I think we need to prioritize. Yes, they're all very bad, but some are worse than others. I always use the example of the burning bush as being one of just, the absolute nightmare invasives. So if we were going to do that type of thing, to make sure that we're not doing it in a scattershot fashion, we should prioritize those invasives that, are understood to be, the worst of the worst, and start with those. I agree they're all bad. I know that's something that, at least for the Simsbury Pollinator Pathway, as we're building our website, that's something, we're going to have on there, invasives versus, natives and that. But I just want to make sure that we're prioritizing them, so that those plants that have just really choked out a lot of the natives are prioritized as a top threat or something like that. Thanks.
Do you think if we went for a 5 top least wanted list?
Yep, I think that's a great idea.
Jason.
Yeah, so I had a thought on this. Some of the invasives actually have usefulness to people. Some of them, like culinarily, like the garlic mustard stuff, is super invasive, and it's also really good to cook with. It makes a great pesto. So any of the stuff that's usable for people, if we can make people aware, maybe even some of the restaurants want to go pick a whole bunch of garlic mustard and put it on the menu.
You mean like if you can't beat them, eat them?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean, garlic mustard is just coming up now. It's best to pick it for use when it's just coming up.
Or it flowers.
Yeah.
Same thing with Japanese knotweed. You can stir fry the. But I don't know. I don't know. Do we want to get into, because of all the dietary issues and allergies and things? Do we want to promote that, or saying that we?
I mean,
could
give people ideas to use it. They're more apt to do something about it. I mean, certainly if people have allergies, they need to be aware, but.
Yeah, Charlie.
So I guess I'm still unclear. Are we basically talking about an education policy at some point?
That does come under our purview as a conservation commission.
Right. Well, and so, I mean, but are we only talking about education?
I hope not. I know one of the goals of the open space is the town is thinking of how to deal with some of, or at least in the open space, we're discussing with the town how to deal with some of these problems. I know I've talked to Tom Roy at Department of Public Works. He's trying to figure out how to deal with the Japanese knotweed, which is one of those dreadful plants that if you mow it, it will just flourish.
Right.
So I think this is one of those things we also have to do an education with the town staff, I think, with the.
Well, I hadn't gone that far yet because I was going to ask, educate. If you guys told me that yes, one of our main goals is education, then I was going to ask education to who?
Yeah.
And I'm expecting there's a couple different groups, but I would like to get like all of the different goals that you're thinking of on the table. It sounds like one's education. It sounds like one is some kind of action plan for the town or a policy plan for the town. And then maybe, when we were doing the woodlands review,
Yeah.
there was a system about how might you, empower people to deal with things if they're out in the trails.
Mhm.
There was some sort of action at that level too. Is there anything else on anybody's list? Is there a fourth and fifth one that should be on this list that we're talking about?
Does anyone have any ideas?
I mean, are you?
It doesn't have to be right. Doesn't have to be right now, but
Yeah.
it would be nice to list them out.
Could be.
I mean, what I would
And
say, one of the logical things to think about, and you haven't said it, maybe there's a reason you're not saying it. Again, I don't know everybody yet, but there was a potential regulatory step with ordinance driven plant lists and those kinds of things. Even just kind of recommended plant lists is part of an education process. Sure.
Yeah, I guess I would have classified that as under education, but
Yeah.
but there is a regulation part that goes with it as well.
That sort of goes down to the letter to the item G that we're going to be discussing about a letter to the state on invasive plants. And one of the hard things is that if we do go and remove these plants from our wild areas, at the same time people are busily planting them in their own yard, only to escape from their yard and go back to the wild areas. There's sort of this repetitive.
Right, but even if that's the case, it doesn't keep you from dealing with the problems, and it all goes to prioritization.
Yeah.
So we're not going to solve any of these things tonight, but I think you could start to think about how to move from here towards paths along education for different groups, paths along an action plan, and I'm suspecting that there's going to be a lot for everyone to do. So
Yeah.
maybe that's one of the goals we should have.
Yeah, I agree. It's multi-pronged. One of the things is not only don't plant the new invasives, because there are a lot of new things that come on. That's why the natives, they're not. The natives and the invasives go together.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're planting the natives, if they escape into the wild, that's okay. They're supposed to be there. The non-natives are not supposed to be there in the wild. So encourage people to plant the natives, take out the invasives, and manage the invasives on their own property. But that also goes double for the town. The town should have a policy. I agree with you. The town has to have a policy, and we're trying to work on that in the open space. How to get a policy for the town to manage the invasive we have on there, and set the goal, set the tone for the town, for the rest of the town.
So that's really a good question. Who do you think is driving the policy here for the town interaction? Is it open space or will it be us?
I think it should be both.
Okay.
I mean, I'm just one voice on the open space. I mean, we have some other people that are supporting it, but if we can get support from the Conservation Commission to say this is a huge problem in town, and it will only get worse. We need to address it now while it's only slightly out of control.
Agreed.
But if we have,
I think you've answered all my questions. Thanks.
okay, good. So if we can write up a like the letter that we're going to be discussing to the and this is going on across the state. Other towns are doing this too. If we can write a letter similar to the one that is being written to the or if we can sign on to a letter similar to the one we're going to be discussing later about the invasive plants, I think, and we can come back to that when we talk about that. I think that will go a long way. We can submit it to town, but it also requires, I think we need to talk to zoning and some of the other land use boards.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I was on zoning, and a lot of, new construction comes through, and, there's a landscape plan along with, drainage plans and wastewater plans and all sorts of things in there. And I think, we should have a larger voice in, for the landscape design. I think of what we did for Dorset Crossing, Cambridge Crossing. And, when they came to us and, we looked at the landscape plan, and there were several, non-native ornamentals in there. And we as a commission made several suggestions to them, which they were more than happy to do. And, we helped them to formulate a plan that had, native pollinating plants in it, as opposed to, non-native ornamentals. I think, we should be able to, give a positive referral to those things. I mean, we on the Conservation Commission, that is our bailiwick, and we should, I think, have a larger voice in that.
So we do have a design, and George and I talked about this. We do have a design
Right.
a board of review on
Right.
signs, which are relatively temporary. But when a planting plan comes in and there's plants of trees and shrubs and all of those things are actually longer lasting and have a bigger impact on the
Agreed.
town than the signs do.
Yes,
So it would make sense for conservation to be consulted on those.
I agree. And you and I have spoken about that too. And, because I brought up when I was on zoning, when there was a wall sconce or, outdoor lighting or signage and things like that, I always went to design review for a positive referral. I agree with that 100%. We should, see on any new construction or any old construction that's being updated, there's a landscape plan. I think it should just come before us, just for us to put an eye on it, as that is our area, and ensure that, the plantings are native, and, that then we can provide an active voice in that.
And Joe, you brought up about lighting sconces and all, which gets you to the other conservation issue about dark sky initiatives, about lighting, proper lighting for habitat, to minimize habitat impact.
Sure.
And that's something that we could also send a letter of referral
Right.
to open space or the various boards saying those should be considered.
Yeah, I don't want it to become
Not sure that
onerous.
they're
I
not.
know it's hard to get through the process here. I get that. And I don't want anyone to think that I'm just saying, let's put up, obstacles to things. I'm just, what I'm saying is, this is our area. We've educated ourselves in this area. And I think we just need to be able to provide a voice for that. I don't want us to become obstructionists.
No, I think it all just boils down to best practices, right? And
Right.
making people aware of them,
Correct.
and I think if we get through that part of it, which is, education of different people and making it so that people can find best practices easily, that will be a huge, steep step forward. And then we can talk about what has to come after that if you don't get the results you want.
Sure.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, you guys know I'm not the plant expert, and I learned how bad the burning bushes in my yard were, and I cut them down.
Good for you.
I still have one small one I need to get rid of, but it's on the to-do list. But, it's really, I think a lot of people just don't know.
No, they don't.
And education will go a very long way. I mean, most people are not going to plant things that are bad for their area if they know they're bad.
Agreed.
So our to-do list is to come up with, I think, links. If you can find, I know several links that we can put up on our website, certainly for the invasive plant. And George, I think you were saying that we're going to be looking at our website. I know there's Susan Messino on the open space has a student from her college that is interested in working on putting up some things for open space. And I think if we submitted things for conservation, they could get up on the website too.
Yeah, I think would be best, as I kind of start my relationships with staff as well, to kind of get me the kind of things that you wanted, the links, and I will work specifically on there's a lot of changes that need to be made. I'm really out all the land use pages, frankly. So, it's kind of on my list to do. So it would be helpful if you get me what you need, and then I'll start that work.
Well, to prepare for this, I just typed in Connecticut invasive plants, and one of the first hits was a page from Yukon,
Yeah,
Right.
Mhm.
invasive plant list, and it's great because it's got the species name, the common name, what it is, if it's a tree or a shrub. They've got links, fact sheets,
yeah.
links.
Yeah.
There's
It's
so much.
exactly what
Yeah.
what we need to link.
And there's so many, I mean, this is a lovely little book, Invasive Plants in your backyard. I mean, there's lovely things that you can link to and that are available on and Yukon, I mean, they're the host for the invasive plant working, SIPWIG, the Connecticut Invasive Plant Working Group. And they have conferences every other year on invasive plants. So yeah, there's a lot of information out there. We don't have to invent the wheel. We just have to link it so that people don't have a hard time finding it.
Right.
So how do you want to go about that? There's going to be 20 zillion things. Are you asking for people to send in a link to some member of the committee, then next time we meet, we can just go through them? Or how are you going to go from where we are now to getting it onto the website?
We could do that if the next meeting you want to, if you see something that's good, I've got a couple of things that I could link. But if you want to get them to us, I mean, George, I know, the communication has always been through our wetlands agent, our town staff member. We don't converse amongst ourselves because of ex parte communication and all the rest. So do you want us to send it to you and then you will compile it, or someone on staff will?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's the best way to do it. Yeah, I
Okay.
think sending it in amongst yourselves is going to be, one, not the right thing to do, but also quite confusing. So,
Yes.
Send it to staff. We'll prep it and compile it or figure out a way to present it to you and get it on a screen and let you see it and put it all in one spot.
That's good.
Okay.
All right. So the homework for next time is to, look, send it, and we'll probably have duplicates. And I would concentrate mainly on the Connecticut website.
Okay.
Because they'd be targeted. And a
and-
lot
and-
of this work has been done.
Yeah, what I would suggest, since your primary email contact is our land use specialist, Joe Hollis, that's who sends you stuff. So I would go ahead and, since you have his email at the ready, probably, I would send that stuff to him and I will get with him and we'll figure all that out.
Good.
Okay.
Good.
Okay.
Excellent.
Sounds like a plan.
Thank you. All right. And then the flip side is we are designated a pollinator friendly town, and Joe is on the Pollinator Pathway. It's not a committee, organization board.
Yes, I'm on the board of directors for that.
Board
Yeah.
of directors for the Pollinator Pathway. So Joe, would you like to talk to us about?
Sure.
There's a link that we can easily make just
Right.
directly to the Pollinator Pathway.
Right. Yeah, we do. We do have a website, and like most websites, it's always a work in progress. But we keep populating with more and more information. We are just, George, for your benefit, we formed a little over a year ago. We're a 501c3. We worked at the time with Eric Wellman, who was first selectman at the time, and the board of selectmen, and they voted for a proclamation that or a declaration that Simsbury is a pollinator friendly town. So we've been in touch with Orlando, with Tom Roy, Maria is on board, and Brian out at the golf course, and we've talked to them about planting natives and that. Now the great thing about the town is they had already started down this path, and they were already doing a lot of work with it. So we have some plans in the work. We've contacted. We've done some work with First Church of Simsbury, and we're going to do more with them, with the Methodist Church, ABC House, a few other places in town. So the main mission of the Simsbury Pollinator Pathway, of course, is to encourage businesses and organizations in town and residents to plant native pollinating plants, to avoid non-native ornamentals, and yes, of course, invasives. Avoid those. And if you have invasives in your yard, obviously to remove them. So, you know, we've just begun the work. I'd actually at some point, I know you're probably busy meeting and greeting everybody, you know, and staff and that, but at some point, you know, maybe we can just sit down and I can kind of give you a little bit more information about it. But we're very excited about it. We think, you know, it's the right way to go. The whole mission is just to ensure that you know, the pollinator population, which has been devastated through, you know, pesticides and herbicides and just spraying things around. You know, we're just working hard to try and revitalize that population, put in place, you know, environmental best practices as far as landscape plans and plantings. And, you know, we're very pleased that, you know, the town wants, you know, had declared itself a pollinator friendly space, wants to be a part of the solution. So, you know, like I said, we have a lot of irons in the fire, and, you know, some are a little further along than others, but it's just, you know, it's been a good groundswell of support, and we're pretty excited about it. So, so that's kind of an overview of it. You know, we can talk on the phone or something. I can give you kind of some more detail on it. So one of the things as far as education goes, you know, I could certainly provide the link to our website, and you know, we're putting up a list of like, you know, recommended plantings for residences and things like that that would be you know, helpful as far as an education piece.
And going along that line, and I know we didn't put this in quite, so I'm just going to tie it into what you said, Joe. In the Open Space Committee, I just submitted, there was a decision by the town of, a policy decision by Newtown in Connecticut for the town itself to plant native plants. And it was 100, they have a guideline, 100% trees, 100% shrubs, 75% perennials, and it doesn't matter about the annuals. You could do where they could come from anywhere, because the annuals aren't going to last through a winter. And that's something that's going to be discussed at the next hopefully at the next Open Space Committee, and to make that, it's a good tie-in with the pollinator friendly aspect of the town. So we haven't had the discussion there, but we could certainly do the discussion of that next meeting that we have, because that would be another one to have a letter from the Conservation Commission saying that this should be something that probably should go in the plan of conservation and development, which is, Joe, coming up soon.
Well, I'm also on planning. I just I have a thing for land use, I guess. But I was just recently elected to planning, so I know one of the things that is coming up in the future is you know, an update to the POCD, and I think while it generally talks about, you know, doing environmentally friendly practice, I would hope that we'd be able to add a few more specifics, or maybe, you know, maybe some language that's a little bit more specific. So yes, Marjorie, I would agree, and changes will be coming up to that.
So I will
started discussions on.
I will send the Newtown letter to for the guidance, the thing that I've sent to Open Space. I will send to Joe Paulus so that he can forward it on to the committee,
right?
So they can look at that, and we can get see if we can get a letter to get in support of something like that. And the nice thing is Newtown has already done it, and a couple of other towns are sort of thinking about it. Canton is thinking about it, so it's always nice when someone else goes first.
Yep.
But it's you know, it's just as easy to plant a native as it is a non-native. So
exactly.
So it's not that much more expensive at this point.
Right.
So it's smart policy, I think, on the town's part, and it would be good to have it sort of written down so someone just doesn't run off and buy whatever they can find and plant it, and then we spend years ripping it out of the wild. So.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll send that on.
Thank you.
All right. Open space. What, George? Tell me that this is just sort of general thinking about how we manage. Oh, you're muted.
Yeah. So, I mean, remember when we were sitting down, we were just putting, you know, a whole bunch of kind of a list of the broad topics that you and this commission have dealt with in the past. I don't know that we had any specific things we wanted to say about it, but maybe other members of the commission wanted to. We were kind of talking about prioritization and it's important to work on. So that list really didn't necessarily have something attached to it.
One of the things I know we did talk about, we do have some open space that is in, we have agricultural space and we have some meadows. And we also have a few little odds and ends of bits, but how they're managed. One of the things we've been discussing at the open space committee is with the meadows, to see if we can set a goal. And this is again something that the Conservation Commission can help with. Set a goal for how we want to manage our meadows. If we don't manage them, they'll all turn back into thickets and then forest very quickly because Connecticut default setting is trees. But with the meadows, it depends whether you want to manage it for the pollinators or whether you manage it for the birds. If you manage it for the birds, it's mainly the basis of when you mow that field. So one of the things we're looking at is what fields do we have, and depending on the size and configuration of the field, some of them could be good for meadow bird habitat, grassland bird habitat, and those you mow in August or as you head towards winter. The ones that are for the pollinators, you leave the stems up because there's a lot of hibernating insects in those, and you don't mow them until spring if you can, but certainly before April when some of the birds come back. But and then it depends on the water conditions in the field. And maybe you can only mow them every other year, or maybe you mow half the field and then flip it the other year. So there are a lot of management decisions that the town needs to make, because right now it's on a default setting. We mow it every year, sort of in fall, and that's not necessarily beneficial for the pollinators, which we've said we're pollinator friendly. And we could also save a lot of money by not mowing them every year. So those are the kinds of discussions I think we could have. There's some information I could get you on that, and that's another letter that we could make referral.
But so Marjorie, is this something that, I think we've had this discussion before.
Yeah.
Is this something that open space is going to take the lead in and we're going to provide support for?
We could do it that way, or
do we? I mean, I think we've had this debate, and we thought that one of the things is that on areas that falls sort of closer to the regular, to some of the there's maybe there's places where we should take the lead. Right. And I don't know if we've solved that problem or described where that dividing line is.
Well, this one, we could certainly be a support, saying this is what we think we should be doing. I think that would add help to the open space committee. I mean, there's a small group of us that are trying to push these issues, and so far everyone's been very agreeable. But it would be nice to have conservation say, yes, this is best management practices that the town needs to follow. And the town's been very agreeable on this. They just need guidance.
It's part of the education plan. Yeah. And I would say that in general, you're not talking about individual invasive species or pollination pathways or open space. You're talking about an education plan that has each of these components. Yeah. And how will you get that information out to the 2 or 3 different groups that you want to educate?
Well, it's not only, this is also a town post. This is a town,
right.
For the mowing of the meadows, it's a town post. For the meadows that we have as a town, at the moment, we don't have a policy on how.
Well, I thought educating the town was one of the big pieces that you had here.
Yes,
so,
it is.
So the education plan goes right to the town as well as to the other groups.
Yeah, you're right.
So I would suggest that you ratchet everything that's on your list here under 2A, B, C, and D, put them down a level and talk about education at the high point. Who are the different groups you're going to, and each of these things is a subset of those.
Well, actually, the town is actually agreeable to already. They're agreeable to just guidance on their mowing plan. So this is just something that it's not going to require any great education. It's just all right. This field you mow in.
Well, it depends. If you already think that you know all the answers, like you've already got a plan. So then it's just a matter of promulgating the plan. But if there's a part of it which says we're still trying to figure out what the plan should be to make that recommendation.
Yeah, the only thing we're
That's
trying to
another
figure
piece.
out which field needs to be which. And, you know,
Right.
that's
Okay, so somebody's got to figure that out before you
Yeah.
go back and
Yeah.
talk to the town.
and
I
it
would-
could be, yes, Joe?
Well, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. I would just also say there's a, I don't know, for lack of a better word, an accountability piece too, which is, you know, we could have the best practices, mowing policy that ever drawn up. We also have to just make sure that it's followed.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, you know,
Okay.
there's sort of, I mean, that's sort of the back end of it. That, you know,
Right.
we need to make sure that's covered as well. And you know, how that's done.
Well, and then in that way, Joe, you also need an evaluation. So
Exactly.
is what your plan? What did you have the right plan? Was it executed
Right.
the way you thought? And did
Right.
it actually work?
Right.
and so
Yeah.
you have to have all three of those pieces put into
Yep.
your system.
Right.
So for that, the town, it's the town, George, you can help us with this. It's the park and recs that goes out and mows the fields, I think, is it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I really haven't been here long enough, but it sounds to me from talking to them that yeah, they handle much of their own maintenance on those kinds of things. Yes.
So with open space has been a conversation. I mean, Town Taberski and you know, and Orlando Casio and various people, and then there's, you know, the farms are separate, and you know, I
Right.
know open space has been talking about how to manage the land there.
Right.
So they're involved in the conversation, but I like the idea that we have some sort of, you know, have we done it correctly? Why did we mow this field this way or something? It's just sort of a little check back. It could be to the Conservation Commission.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I would, you know, yeah, I agree with that. I think it's, you know, that, you know, we provide that piece. You know, but like I said, for lack of a better word, the accountability piece, where it's like, okay, you know, we've mowed these fields and, you know, we've seen an increase in pollinators or birds or whatever. And, you know,
Or there might be a problem that we need to address.
right. Or there's a problem that needs to be adjusted, or maybe we need to adjust something. And,
Yeah.
you know, I think that's a good way to go about it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right. And the other open space issue was the agricultural lease. Up until this year, we really didn't have anything other than a very basic lease. And the Open Space Committee did come up with, and I think it was approved by the Board of Selectmen, to have best management practices for organic farming
Great.
practices, something that would improve the soil of the land, the organic content of the soil. And the town has now instituted a 5-year rolling lease. Before that, it was a 1-year. And there was no incentive for the farmers who were leasing on a year-by-year basis to really invest in the improvement of the soils. So
Right.
there is a new agricultural list, and it was a compilation of I think Manchester and another town. So it's lovely, you know, we can take the work of other towns, the good work of other towns, and came up with an agricultural policy list, which is a vast improvement on the one that we did have, which really didn't encompass much. So that's also part of the open space that, you know, we haven't had to be involved in, but it has, you know, it's a good chunk of open space and land that Simsbury has. And now we have a policy for it, which I think that's one of the things is getting the policy and the support for the policy for the town, the best management policy.
Right.
And that one might need a look in at the end too. We don't have a good, you know, who's going to oversee it at the end.
Mhm.
And then there's the forest management. I know we had extensive discussions on that. And that's something that we need to continue to look at, especially from the invasive species that are invading a lot of our forests. How as a town we're going to address that, how we're going to find the money to address that. And that might be a budgetary issue, because there are groups that will go in and, you know, you can hire and get, you know, some of these things out, but it's an expense. You know, this is something that the Simsbury Land Trust, we have some properties that have, you know, some issues with invasive plants. And, you know, we're trying to figure out what's the best way of doing it.
Mhm.
So Marjorie, how are you thinking about getting, you know, from where we are to some kind of plan on item D? I mean, it involves obviously education, prioritization, you know, all the things we've been talking about. But what, you know, is this something that open space is currently dealing with also, or are they
I'm
buried
not-
in other things?
No, they've sort of left the forest to you know, at this point it's a self-organized forest. I know I'm currently taking a was it Master Woodland Management course out of Yale and DEEP and Connecticut Forests and Parks and things. Um, it's you know, the best management practices are all over the lot. It's, you know, it depends on what your goal is for that forest.
Right.
Yeah. So, you know, that's another thing we have to identify what the goal is for the forest. And I know in one of the issues that's coming up is dirt bikes on property. Where? You know, where would be the best place? Where would be the worst place? Do we want them at all? I mean, those are the things that eventually I think the Conservation Commission will need to be involved in.
Okay.
And trail maintenance. One of the things that has been brought up at Open Space is developing a Simsbury Stewards program that is similar to the Ridgefield Rangers. I think I brought that up a couple of years ago. It hasn't quite got off the ground, but we've got at least we did have a conversation with the fellow who manages the Ridgefield Rangers, the citizen volunteers who manage the trails. And I know the town doesn't have the staff to go and manage every single trail we've got in town. So it is run under the conservation group in Ridgefield. And the question was, which group would like to run it? You know, I think it'd be better under conservation than open space.
Yeah.
But do we have someone who'd be willing to take it on as a project? They have a dedicated conservation member who just sort of helps organize it and keeps track of, you know, various things. Just as I know, it's similar to what happens at the Simsbury Land Trust. We have an overall steward that, you know, is on the board who just sort of oversees the volunteers. So, you know, I want you to think about whether any of you are interested in taking on that particular role, because we do need someone to oversee it. But
Okay, so do you have a feeling for what that exists right now? So it's a well-defined role, or is it still being developed?
No, it's a pretty set out. It could be a pretty set out thing. There is this a model again in the field, and they can walk. They've got all sorts of printed material. They've got it really set up for Ridgefield, which is very adaptable to Simsbury. It's just a matter of, you know, you assign various people to various trails, or people volunteer for various trails, and then they report back what they've done. And, you know, or if there's an issue, you can send them out to do various things. No tree cutting, you know, some, you know, minor trail work and things like that. But it's, you know, it reports back if there's something that's major, like a tree has to be chopped down, that gets referred back to the town. But I can send you the information they sent us through the Ridgefield Rangers, and we could actually have the fellow. He'd be very amenable to coming and talking to us. I mean, we could do it by Zoom, so he doesn't have to travel up from Ridgefield. But that might be a good topic for one of our meetings.
Yes, I would definitely think so. And so I'm trying to keep track of which things are actionable sort of right now, which ones are involved in, you know, sort of a bigger education policy. Sounds like this one's close to being actionable pretty quickly.
This one would be, yeah. And
Okay.
I know at the Land Trust, we have people who are very dedicated to their particular trail. And, you know, sometimes an individual or a couple of individuals or a family takes on, it's sort of like, you know, adopt a mile, but you take on that particular trail, you pick up the trash, you monitor for invasives, and then once a year you do a little report. And at the Land Trust, we do have reports that are easily filled out and then submit. And it would be good to have a database for the town. You know, we could see where there's erosion along our trails, where there's invasive plants. We can do, you know, things like that.
Okay.
So that one's pretty actionable.
Well,
So I will send you the Ridgefield Rangers.
Yeah, if somebody, I can look up the link too. It's Richfield. I'll look it up.
Well, they did send us a whole bunch of information that I could just pass on.
Okay.
But it's probably on their website. But these are the internal forms that they have.
Mm-hmm.
And they do have a nice party at the end of the year, which I thought was as a thank you for their page. It's a very simple party. But just as a thank you for their group. All right. So website updates. George, we're going to be sending you the links. We sort of already discussed this. So, and it can be on any of these topics. And then we can discuss them at our next meeting,
Yeah, I think that line item E, website updates, really is a compilation of the whole discussion on education. So
yeah. And then discussion of future meeting stuff, virtual or in person. So I know, George, when we met, we were saying that when we do have an application before us, it would really be nice to meet with the applicant. So definitely in-person meetings, if all goes well, we don't suddenly surge again, we can think about meeting in person at the town hall if everyone's comfortable with that. And first off, is everyone comfortable with that meeting in the town hall for the next meeting?
I am.
Yes.
If anyone feel uncomfortable?
It's not that I'm comfortable. I find it convenient to have both options. Is it an either or situation? Is it either or situation?
I'm going to ask if we could have the option to have people Zoom in, just because I think it's convenient both, for maybe some of the commissioners or for people coming before us. If we have that option, I don't know if that's feasible.
Like a hybrid.
Do we have hybrid options, George?
yeah, that's a complicated question because it's. Yes, I think potentially we do, because I know the Board of Selectmen use, and have used a hybrid version. It's just, it's a matter of resources. I at this point, I would have to help you run the meeting, but also help run the Zoom. It just can be a little complicated. I may need a little tutorial over at Town Hall in order to arrange that, but I think it's possible. I think I've got to work with administration to have to try and figure that out.
Well, I know sometimes people have to travel and sometimes, they can't get the meeting. If it works out that we could have, and I don't know, how would it work if we have a quorum and people can show up, we have it live, but if we don't have a quorum, but people can come to a Zoom meeting and make a quorum, we have it in virtual with.
Yes,
ahead of time.
The hybrid is certainly permissible under state code right now. I think I understand the legislature is working on extending, kind of those COVID allowances towards the end of this month. So we're going to know that at the end of this month.
Yeah.
But it's our understanding that we're going to be allowed to continue in person or hybrid or by Zoom. But yeah, you could have certainly a quorum of mixed attendance. If that's what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and if we have, George and I was discussing that maybe when we don't have an applicant before us, when it's just a discussion like this, we could do it by Zoom. Would that be convenient for people?
Yes.
Yeah.
Vince, I don't know that you have an application coming for your next meeting.
Okay. So for our next meeting, we can discuss, I'll be sending some things on, and we can get down to some more nitty gritty on some of these topics. At least work on one thing, and I can work with you, George, on what we can get done at the next meeting.
Yeah, sure.
All right. And then the last item is this in this section is discussion regarding the State Environmental Committee letter on invasive plants. So that cuts kind of back to the invasive species topic. And I don't know if you all had a chance to read the letter. Did you get the letter in your packet?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. Did anyone have any reasons to think that we shouldn't join in this list? I know the Simsbury Land Trust is planning on signing on. I think the more the state is aware of, I mean, they are aware, but the more
Yep.
voices that are raised, this is a huge issue for the towns and for the land trusts, the better. I know a lot of these plants are still sold.
Yeah.
Well, the thing that struck me was it just wasn't like saying to Hartford, do something. They actually said, this is what you can do.
Yeah.
And it seemed very easy. It's not anything difficult or any crazy thing. It's all common. I hate to use the word common sense because it's way overused, but it's easy. It's easy. It's not difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So does anyone have any problem signing on to this letter? As a
No.
conservation commission?
Do we need to motion that or?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, I would like to make a motion that we, as the Simsbury Conservation Commission, sign on to the letter to the state, subject of invasive plants crisis and state inaction.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Excellent.
So I just have a question. Is there a deadline on this? Because I'd actually like to bring this letter to the Simsbury Pollinator Pathway Board as
That would be
well.
good. No, I haven't. I'm going to contact them tomorrow. I was waiting for today.
Okay.
To see.
Because I'd like to bring it to, because I think this is I think, we could add our voice to it as well.
Yeah.
I think that would be important because obviously it's, it's important.
Yeah.
So I just want to say a couple things. One, hi everybody.
I'm sorry. I've been watching you. I was thinking, Andrew.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Hi. Nice to meet you guys. I'm Andrew Bade. Part of why I bring myself up now is that I'm a fisheries biologist who works for the state of Connecticut, and I came to mind just now agreeing to a motion to write a letter to myself, essentially. How I should be handling situations like that where my vote is sort of directly related to what's happening to my role as a professional at
In
DEEP.
your first
That
meeting,
makes
you
sense.
already have a conflict.
I would think you would recuse yourself from the vote or you can abstain.
Yeah.
I don't want
I
to speak for
abstain from
Marjorie,
the-
but
I
Yeah, so-
retroactively abstained from the previous conversation.
that. I guess that works.
So how would we handle that? Would we say the Conservation Commission minus one member or what? Because I've
Oh,
also
no, you
said
would write the vote down as X amount of yays, 0 nays, and 1 abstention. Yes? I mean,
okay, I know
Yeah,
in the
that
past
sounds
I've
right.
tried to say that, we need, a consensus, but no, you're not disagreeing, but you're just abstaining from.
well, he's
from-
abstaining because there's a conflict of interest.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just my 2
Potential
cents.
conflict.
Right, a potential conflict of interest.
All
That's
right.
just my 2 cents, having gone through a couple of these things before like this.
Yeah, I think
Also,
I think you're right.
Unrelated. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think Joe's right. I think you kind of have 2 options. I mean, if it's something you just don't want to participate in,
Right.
you should abstain. If there's something you have a real, true conflict, like
Yeah,
financial
recuse.
conflict, then I would recuse and not participate. at all.
Recuse, yeah.
Okay, I abstain in that case.
All right.
The 2 other things I wanted to say. One was I apologize for my kids being on the call. I promise I'm not
no.
normally this distracted.
Good.
No, not at all.
And
No,
then,
no, we're a friendly commission. We're
Okay.
fine.
Almost ended up on this meeting too.
okay, I promise I'm not normally that distracted.
It's all
And
good.
then the last thing is we keep referring to the website. I assume we're referring to the Simsbury town website. Are there any particular pages therein that I should be focusing on that we're implicitly referring to when we say that?
We're hoping on the conservation website, but actually the town website is it's difficult. I mean, I don't know that anyone's really going to check on the conservation website
Mhm.
for a lot of these things. So some of
Try
these things should be further up, or somehow we should. I'm not quite sure how to do this with the town website because
Okay.
It's definitely a piece we have to look at. It's how it's one thing to say this should be on the website. The second thing is like
So
how you organize
varied.
the
It's
website
gonna be
so somebody
hard.
sees it.
Mhm.
Yes.
I
Okay.
plan to help a little bit with that. But Andrew, my sense is that each and every board and land use commission kind of has their own page where you list the agenda and the members, and so that's probably the proper place to maybe expand with an education piece of that page.
Do we have Google Analytics data or any other sort of usage statistics for that page?
No.
Yeah,
That would be good to know, right? If our goal is to educate people and we find that we get 6 clicks annually, you know, maybe
That's about the
there's
right
other
place.
vehicles for sharing that information. I'm not saying that's the case. It would just be good to know if it worked.
No, but Andrew, that brings up the point. I mean, how is anyone looking on the town page going to think, I'm wondering what plant to plant in my yard. I'm going to go to the conservation in the wetland page. I don't know that anyone would. So, I mean, I don't know that I would.
Well, I mean, an idea maybe, you know, they send out a weekly or whatever newsletter to, you know, put a link in there. Or if we do something new, that could go out on that. I mean, it's usually like the first selectman's letter, or, you know, there's a letter that comes out from the town. I get it by email that says, here's what's going on in town, or this board of selectmen voted on this or that. I think anytime we add something new, maybe, you know, we could put a link in there, and I mean, at least we're doing some sort of outreach.
Yeah,
You know, it's kind of low hanging fruit.
Yeah, Jason.
A thought on the outreach, and maybe it's something several of the land use committees can kind of put their heads together on. You know, just getting people to know that we're here and that we have information is probably the biggest battle. Would it make sense to maybe at some of the town events like September Fest, if we had a booth and we could hand out information? You know, I'm sure that there's enough people on the various land use boards that would volunteer to staff that. And, you know, it's just a way to kind of raise our profile in the public sphere of things.
Goes right back to the education piece, right? You know, what's the plan for that?
Because I just think, honestly, most people, when they go to plant something, they walk into a nursery and they're like, that looks pretty, I want to plant that. And they don't know anything about it, you know, and I just, you know, I'm trying to think of ways of how we can engage with people and get them to be more aware, because, you know, like I said before, I have no idea about plants. I had no idea that I'm sure there's plenty of other invasive things growing in my yard that I didn't plant there. But I don't know what's invasive. And the only way that I had any clue that burning bushes were bad was by happening to be on this commission.
Yeah, when we look at plants, we look at we look at see if it's pretty, and 2, right, as because of where we are, is it deer resistant? And those are the first 2 things. And what's the price? Because we bought some really pretty stuff, and then all of a sudden, you know, a week later, we just spent $100 to feed the deer. I mean, I'm not doing that.
One of the things that I've found, it would be lovely to link up. This is one of the things I'm going to ask to link, is this Connecticut Native Plants Sustainable Landscaping thing. And the wonderful thing is it has these wonderful little charts, and it does say, you know, there are all these little tables and you can never get through them, but it does say whether they're deer resistant.
What is deer resistant? I mean,
nothing is deer resistant.
Nothing.
They're hungry enough, Ellie.
Like,
actually,
that would probably
we end up spraying our plants with I think it's like a clove. It's a natural repellent, but it's really smells, you know, it's pretty powerful clove for about a half hour, and then it goes away. But we've seen the deer sniffing around, and I'm like, oh, I'll go somewhere else. Go next door. I don't care, but don't eat my stuff.
So we'll you know, this is definitely one that we can put up. I don't know if anyone's going to flip through. It's more helpful if you have one that's, you know, like, you know, just a few. But this one's got everything. But it also, like, here's the one where it says the deer resistant. It's got the little deer on the side.
That's what
I didn't realize there was
need.
deer
Nice
resistant
graphics. So you know, that's definitely, that's a Yukon product. So, you know, Yukon has come up with a lot of good stuff. So, you know, and what I think we can also do is look at other, you know, this could be a homework assignment for next time. Look at other towns' websites and see if they're doing a better job. Down in Weston, they started the Pollinator Pathway. So, you know, down in that area, they're doing a lot with the towns and plannings, it might be good to look and see how they're promoting it on their on their town websites. So, if you can, everyone looks around and sees if there's something, a better mousetrap that
Yeah.
someone else has come up with.
Because I think the biggest issue we have is people just don't know we exist and don't
Yeah.
even know that there's a problem.
Go to our page.
You have to raise awareness, and that's
But also with the other land trust, the other land use boards.
yeah. Oh,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah, we
I
have to be
agree.
all on the same page. The town staff, the boards, and so the message goes out.
Right.
Yeah, I think most people in town don't know any of the land use boards exist, quite frankly.
Until they
Well-
have to do something and
Yeah.
it's another bureaucracy thing.
Yeah.
Like my brother-in-law's like, oh, inland wetlands, you're on that committee? Oh my, he lives in another town. It's like, oh, all they do is just put roadblocks, so I can't do this, I can't do that. I'm like, well,
No,
not really. I mean,
I can't dump my
It's-
yard waste in the wetlands.
yeah, it's like, well, sorry.
Dang it.
Kind of matters.
So, but if we can get, that message out, across the land use board. So it's an education for town staff, it's for the land use boards, and then for the public as well. So
Yep.
back to your, who are we educating? So,
Mhm.
All right. All right. Any other discussion on general planning topics? We've covered everything from soup to nuts. I think we solved all the problems. Well done.
Created a few too, probably. But
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah.
So we've got things to do on those meetings that we don't have an application, and even of the ones we do. And then we've got item 3, appointment of George McGregor as town wetlands agent.
So,
I,
remember,
oh,
I was gonna, let me just remind you, of course, is that the assistant town planner position, it typically has been dedicated to this commission in particular, and typically has that responsibility. Of course, we lost Mr. Hazel as soon as I arrived, and he moved on. And so he was, so you have a vacancy there. You really probably should appoint someone in case something does come up. I do have my deep inland wetland watercourse training. I did that in June 2020. So as opposed to giving it to Laura, who I'm trying to, Laura Barkowski, I'm trying to relieve a little bit of her duties to give her a chance to breathe. So I think it makes sense to offer myself for that and appoint me for that.
Thank you. And speaking of the deep wetlands training, I know I've completed mine. I submitted my certificate to Tom Hazel. I don't know whether I need to submit it again. I don't know whether it's, it's in the records or not.
We have it. I saw it in a folder. I saw
And
it.
has anyone else finished their deep training?
No.
Their
Yeah,
wetlands?
I finished it a while ago. I mean, it's like you have to do it like every couple of years, or?
I don't know. I've never seen it specified how often you have to do it.
It's not clear. I think they ask you to do it whenever they come out with the new version.
So I did it. It was either last year or the year before, or when last time we went through this. So there should be a record of it.
It's okay, good. For those of you who haven't done it, it's a good idea. Just devote a weekend.
It's not required of commission members,
No,
but it is
it's not required, but
it's a very nice, helpful tutorial.
It's a
for sure.
worthwhile thing to do.
Totally.
Yeah, if you got the time and interest, that's good. So, back to appointment of George as the town wetlands agent. Do we have a motion to appoint?
I move that we appoint George McGregor as the town wetlands agent.
And
A second.
all right, Charlie, a second. And by the way, Charlie, are you I'm sorry, I didn't do this at the beginning. Are you an alternate now or full?
I think I'm still an alternate. I haven't heard one way or the other. So
All right,
I'm
so-
assuming I'm an alternate.
so
You probably should have seated him, but that's okay.
This is too late as we
It is
close
not-
the meeting.
Not
Yeah.
too late. No.
All right, Charlie, you're seated as for our vacancy.
Okay.
Board. Sorry about that. So we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. All right, and I think that's all for tonight. And unless anyone has anything else to discussion, and welcome, Andrew. I'm sorry I didn't welcome you in the beginning. And yes, babies are welcome, as are dogs and cats and everything else.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a Zoom
Thank
meeting.
you.
What would a Zoom meeting be without them?
That's
So
right.
do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.